The Joyful Friar podcast is made possible by the generous support of our friends. To support the podcast, please visit nathan-castle.com and donate today. Hello and welcome to this episode of the Joyful Friar podcast. I'm Father Nathan Castle, your host. And today I have two guests that I'm eager to know more about and introduce you to. They are Minda Cox and Sami Madden. Sami, why don't you say a little bit about yourself and Minda and how you know each other and how we've kind of come to this moment?
Definitely. So I'm Sami Madden. I've been working with Father Nathan on this podcast, among other Zoom things. I know Minda. We were both actually born in India, and we came to know each other through our nonprofit organization called ICANN, which is International Child Amputee Network. It's a group for children and adults who are amputees, and which the acronym is ICANN.
Okay.
And Minda and I met through that organization. Minda and I are both amputees.
Like Sami said, we were both from India. I met Sami through there. We're both adoptees. I was born in 1988. I was adopted at 22 months. I am a watercolorist. I have had the privilege of traveling around in various parts of the world. I graduated from college in 2013. I have written a book called Ordinary, and it includes my experiences with ICANN. I live in Missouri. I teach watercolor classes, proud aunt of several beautiful nieces and nephews. I am the youngest of five adopted sisters, and I could go on and on, but
Well,
I
you
am
will
an
go on.
artist.
This is only the first few minutes of the show.
Yeah, so I'm an artist and I live in Bolivar and I'm a very independent woman with
Okay.
no arms and no legs.
With no arms and no legs, I've never heard the word amputee. I always thought of that as somebody who had arms and legs that had to have one removed for a medical reason or something. But is being born without them, that's
Yes.
also that's considered an amputee?
Yes, so there's two different forms of amputees. One is called traumatic, which is what you were just describing, which
Uh-huh.
is when you lose it later in life, whatever circumstances.
Right.
And then there's those of us who are born like it, which is called congenital. So that's what
Okay.
Minda and I are both.
All right.
Yeah.
Well, you've already educated me, and it's only 9 o'clock in the morning where I am. So thanks for that. That makes me a little smarter than I was before you guys started talking. I was on your website, and it seems like the message that you want to tell the world is, well, first of all, you wrote a book called Ordinary. Um,
Mhm.
your artwork, I really loved the prose that your website says that it's not first person, it's someone speaking about you, uh, at least in the grammar of it. Her art dances when she cannot paint. Her paint runs for her when she's bound to her wheelchair. Colors jump and clap for joy when she can do neither. That's really eloquent. Did you write that?
I did write that, and he was kind of taking it from a third person because he really, really loved that. But that is actually a quote from my book that he actually turned into a third person. But that was the way I described my artist statement when I had my very first art show in May of 2006 at the age of 18 years old.
Mhm.
Yeah, I had my very first art show then. And that I studied for a while under the tutelage of Emily Frost. When I started that, when I returned from homeschooling after I tried public school for a while, and that was a very difficult situation. Being in public school, there was a fight to get accommodations made for me because in many ways I was competent, but I still had trouble physically keeping up with school assignments and needing some of the accommodations and adaptations that school really to take on. But when I was home with my mom, did all kinds of projects and art projects and did all kinds of stuff. But in school, they have to follow a certain curriculum and
Sure.
sort of, and trying to adapt that was difficult. So I returned to homeschooling. I wanted to do art work again. And they, and so I shown some interest in doing specifically artwork again. My mom, we looked for someone who would be just interested in just doing something. We had no idea that we would find someone, that God would bring someone in our life who would completely take, bring someone who would help me discover art being my voice. And I am from India, where art is a way of life almost. Like in most cultures, art is a way of life and a form of communication. And art became a form of communication for me. But Emily is like my own mother, a strong Christian woman who challenged me and did not let my disability in any way be an excuse as to why I couldn't try something. But she really worked with me, and it became more than just art. It became a spiritual way of worshiping God and honoring him, if that makes sense.
Of course it does.
And
On the first page of God's also written a book, and on the first page, it's all about God creating. And
yes,
I was an art
and
major at one point too.
oh, were you really? Wow.
It happens
And
this coming week. The Feast of Fra Angelico, the painter, is coming up, and we're doing I'm at the University of Arizona. We're doing a show of we're doing a mass for artists and having a little gallery thing afterwards.
oh, that's cool.
Yeah.
I discovered that that was the way I really worshiped the Lord, and when it said art is the way. So that's kind of that art that became my artist statement when I was writing my artist statement. That kind of what is how that came about. And my mom being a strong Christian woman herself, that's kind of how that all came to be. So that was really, and my mom is a retired Episcopal priest actually, and it's her birthday today, by the way.
Oh, good for her.
So
I'm always interested in origin stories, and you mentioned that you were adopted at 22 months and were born.
yes.
Was that in India?
I was born in India, yes,
So
to
was English an acquired language for you, or were you listening to English even before you were adopted?
I was not really learning a whole lot of English before I was adopted. My mom adopted me at 22 months. I was actually born to a young, newly married couple in a fishing village, a
Hmm.
poor new family in a mud hut.
Yeah.
And but they took me to the hospital hoping that somebody there might have some idea of what they might be able to do to help me.
Mhm.
And being, as you might be aware, that baby girls in India and in a lot of countries like that are not seen as valuable and are not seen because of either the dowry system or because of the expenses and the fact that my father kept me alive, that my family chose to keep me alive, and the fact that my Indian father chose to take me to the hospital and leave his name claiming me and hoping that one day that I would find my family is pretty remarkable.
Huh?
And that God chose him to be my father and chose that for me is pretty incredible. I was united with them 20 years later, and that's an incredible story. That's in the book.
Uh-huh.
Um, my first language was probably Kannada, and then some Hindu when I was in the orphanage.
Do you have even any hazy memories of that? 22 months is really, really young to have a memory, but
No, But you know, I when I returned to India in 2008 for the celebration of the children's home, Ashraya, which means shelter. When I returned there for their 25th anniversary, the celebration of that, the smells and some of the food and the culture that became familiar once again. And one of the cool things about my mother, Catherine Cox, is that she never let us forget our Indian heritage. We studied about India, we learned about our culture, we learned about as much as we could about our family. One of the many cool things about my mother, Catherine, was that she never let us forget any of our Indian heritage that
You're
we have.
using the plural a lot, and you mentioned that you're one of five adopted sisters. Are some of them from India also?
Yes, I have two other sisters who are also from different parts of India,
See.
who are older than I am,
Hmm.
and that were adopted at different times.
Uh-huh.
So,
Sammy,
yes.
I don't know that part of your story. I don't think we've ever really talked about it. Does it have similarities with Minda's?
A little bit, but it's also a little different. I never knew my birth parents. I was born in the hospital, and then shortly after that, very shortly after being born, I was given up for adoption. They called an orphanage. The orphanage director came and got me, and who is now really at times like my second mom. I've always considered her like that. I grew up in an orphanage for the first 5 years, so I know I didn't know anything else other than that and started learning English. They made sure that in the orphanage we had school, and when I went back in 2015, some memories came back. One of them being when I went into the orphanage, which it's not no longer an orphanage, but went back to the building. I looked at the area where we used to play, because I have pictures and videos, and I said to myself, and I said out loud, "Wow, this is not like what it used to be," in the sense that it was small. And it's because I was seeing at it from being taller and older versus
Yeah,
when
yeah,
I was seeing it younger. And, it just seemed like it was a bigger space then.
sure.
And so it was really one of those interesting things that happens to you where you're like, oh, wait, this doesn't seem the same. Um, and I also got the honor of meeting some of the people who took care of me in the orphanage. So definitely it's a little, you know, growing up in an orphanage, well, Minda and I did that. And my parents did try to keep the culture going. And some of the connections I had, but I, to this day, don't know who my birth parents are except for the name I have of my birth mom.
Hmm.
But that's the extent of it.
And you're a part of a large family.
Yeah, I'm one of 8 kids.
And are you also the youngest?
I am.
So the two of you meet through ICANN. At what age did you meet? Was that?
I was definitely a lot younger.
I was about 12, I think, when we met. I think we were
Yeah,
12.
Mhm.
yeah. So long time
And like,
ago.
yeah, and like Sammy, when I went back, I was reunited with a lot of the aunties, as they're
Hmm.
called,
Yep,
in
yep.
Australia. And Ashraya is not exactly an orphanage anymore. They still help children, but not in the same way.
Uh-huh.
And the director has since died. They've changed a lot. But no, Sammy and I were pretty young. We weren't exactly in, you were very small and okay, so you were about 9.
But you were
They were
united in that you were in a cohort where the acronym ICANN is all about ability. And I suppose that they were trying to instill a sense of possibility and positive future. Is that right?
Yeah, it's definitely been an organization that has set out to let kids and adults know they can do anything that they want in the world, and that being an amputee doesn't stop that. There's always, Minda and I both have experience with accommodations. There's always accommodations, and there's just, you know, nothing that can really stop us from doing what we want to do. And it's having that encouragement, and that support group you're a teen and you're trying to figure out everything that you're dealing with, and then on top of that, you got being an amputee, and how do you manage all that different things, and then being an adult, how do you do that? And even now, in my own way, trying to figure out how do I manage things so that I continue to grow up, and in age, and trying to become more and more independent. And so it's all those, having that resource group there, really is what kind of ICANN is.
While you're on a roll talking about what you do, tell us what you do. What do you do for a living? And
So currently I'm a recruiter for a defense company and I get to work from home. And so I get to hire mechanical engineers. So, people are a lot smarter than I am and understand math a lot better than I am and things like that. So I hire those folks for a defense company. And so I get to work from home. And in the past, I've done running nonprofit organizations like ICANN, and I have done uh, doing the sound tech at the Newman Center, among other things. So kind of had a diverse way of doing, background in doing the various things I do, and helped you out a lot too.
yeah, the Newman Center is the Catholic campus ministry at the University of Arizona in
Yes.
Tucson, where I live. I'm not a staff member, but I'm in residence. And Sami and his family, that's how we got to know each other at all. And Minda, you've done, at least on your website, in addition to all your artwork, which we'll circle back around to, you've also done a lot of international travel, haven't you?
Yes, I went back to India for my college. I studied in Africa because that was my college degree was intercultural and communications. One of the requirements of that degree was to go study abroad somewhere for 6 months. And I had a friend who was working in her own ministry in Botswana, Africa. She said, you can just come and work with me. So I did. I worked with the disabled there. I had to learn about that culture. And I didn't want to come back home. I worked with children with AIDS, a disabled woman who had just recently lost her arms and legs due to a terrible staph infection.
Oh,
And I got to teach her how to work with her new body. I worked with children who had various disabilities. And then I came back and graduated. And then a friend of mine whose husband was the bishop in Florida, who was originally from Honduras, whose wife set up a ministry there called Our Little Roses to help orphaned women and children. I worked there in San Pedro Sula, Honduras. Then I worked Haiti with a medical group. So yeah, I've worked in some places, mainly with people with disabilities. But my passion is I love to teach watercolor, and I enjoy doing that and encouraging others through my art. So that's my ministry.
you know, a display on your website. What is the web address? You're not the
MindaCox.net.
cable company. You are Minda
No.
Cox. You do a lot of watercolor of flowers, uh,
Yes.
birds, organic things, and
Mhm.
there's depictions of you sometimes holding a brush in your mouth, and other times it looks like cupped between your shoulder and cheek.
Yes. Yes, I do.
Yeah.
Yes.
MindaCox.net. And is your art for sale?
Yes. People can message me on there.
Sami, what's something that you'd like to do that you haven't done yet?
So for some time I've thought about this. It's we go back to vocations. I spent my time going through the Jesuits discernment process for a while there. If the things changed in the church, allowing married priests, I would be a priest.
Oh, I didn't know that. I'm glad I asked.
Yep. I've thought about it for some time and went through the steps of discernment using the Jesuits discernment process,
Uh,
and one of the things I learned from that the most was that vocations isn't just to religious life. Vocations is what your passions are.
well, I wonder how that will unfold. I guess I'll have to stay tuned.
Yes, you will.
How about you, Mint? Is there something you haven't done yet that you want to do, or maybe something you're already doing that you'd like to do more of in some different way?
There's a lot of things I'd like to do, but off the top of my head, that one of the things I would love to do is go to Ireland
Oh,
and
okay.
see all of those
I think I would too. I think I'll wait till the afterlife when I don't have to fly and bring luggage.
Me too. And we don't have to worry about travel and all that shindig. Yes.
A lot of my work involves the afterlife and helping people
Yes.
that had
Yeah.
traumatic deaths and so on. So part of my heart is really in the ozone layer. It's in the afterlife and seeing what people are doing and mostly healing at the level that my prayer partners and I work. And Sammy's been involved in some of that work. And I've done some international travel, and I have some more coming. I have a sister living in the Azores, and I'll be going over there sometime this year, I'm pretty sure. But for a lot of it,
Yeah.
I just think it'll be fun to do when it doesn't cost anything and you can go there with the blink of an eye. I believe all that's possible.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And flap your own wings, right?
Yeah, something like that. I just think that there's just a lot of joys that await us. You how you chose flowers as one of the things that you do a lot. There's so many things that you could depict, but much of your website has a lot of floral and organic stuff.
Well, flowers were one of the things I started out with because they were a comfortable subject.
Huh?
I have branched out quite a bit,
Huh?
but the watercolor flowers are an easy subject because you can just kind of get into them.
Hmm.
And I started out with a medium that was easiest. And I want to depict um, nature and I want to depict beautiful things because my life isn't sad. It's not to say that our lives are perfect and easy, but they're not totally sad. It's not all cupcakes and rainbows, obviously, but it's not just tragedy and difficulty either. And that's why I named my book Ordinary, because even though our struggles are different, we have them like every other ordinary person. They may not be the same, but like every ordinary person, we have them. Sammy, do you want to add anything to that or?
No, I think that's what we and I strive for along other amputees is to just be seen as ordinary, not, extraordinary or, you know,
Mhm.
um, this first thing that you should put up on a pedestal or anything.
You're
So,
touching my
Mhm.
heart. I want to tell you a story about ordinary.
mm,
Uh, I was at Stanford for 7 years as the director of the Catholic community, and I heard my undergraduates there talk about how stressed they were. They're always stressed. They felt like they could hardly form a sentence without the word stress in it. And the other one was competition. It's so competitive. And so, uh, and all of them had been valedictorians and they all play the oboe. That there was just nobody there that was anybody else's idea of ordinary because they'd been told they were extraordinary and they proved it over and over and over again. And they're so extraordinary. It seemed to me burdensome to be extraordinary. Uh,
Mm.
you're familiar with duck syndrome? The idea of somebody gliding along the water and making it look effortless, but beneath the surface, they're paddling like mad. They
I've
warned
not heard that, but
I got
wow.
there that be careful to watch for duck syndrome because our students do this. They try to make it look like they're always gliding and with ease, but underneath they're paddling like mad. Well, anyway, I decided to do a retreat called "Called to Be Ordinary" because when we use vocational language in the church, it's often that God is going to do extraordinary things with you, Minda. Sammy, you're just going to be the extraordinary. You're going to be, you know, building the kingdom of God and whatnot. It just seems also lofty and aspirational. And of course, that has a place. But I looked up the word ordinary, and it's a weaving metaphor.
mm,
It has to do with being a strand in a loom. And
Mhm.
when you're weaving cloth, you don't want an extraordinary strand. You want you want the one on the right and the left and the middle to all be the same, so that they create this uniform fabric. And so we did this thing where we did you ever make a loom? Make a little like a pot holder?
mm.
It might have been a
Yeah.
difficult thing to do without fingers and hands,
Yeah.
but you do a lot of you do a lot of things with the body you got. But I remember being in these little after school programs where they had these like stretchy things that you put and you make them go in and out and make a pot holder. Well, we did that with crepe paper. Um, uh, I had the students stand in a square with like 10 people on each side, and they had these, crepe paper streamers, that are on a roll,
Mhm.
and they were having to weave them in and out, which took a lot of work. And then we'd ring a bell and we'd pull somebody out because they were so extraordinary. We have to honor the extraordinariness of whoever it was. I remember one of them at Stanford, they have so many superior Olympic athletes and they live
Mhm.
in the residence halls with everybody else. They're not in an athletic dorm. So your roommate just won a gold medal in the Olympics. And so we had this guy named Gymnasium who was a super pentathlete or whatever it was, and he was too extraordinary to be doing this ordinary task. So we pulled him out and put him on a stage, and we did put him on a pedestal. We actually had a pedestal. That meant the people on either side of him suddenly had to do their work and his. And we kept calling one more and one more and one more out because they were so extraordinary until the whole project just became a mess because there was nobody
Oh, yeah.
to do the ordinary work. I was trying to help them understand that you don't have to wake up to be extraordinary day after day. You could just be the person God made you to be, and that might just be extraordinary enough without having to have a lot of bells and whistles going off. Anyway,
Mhm.
thanks for indulging me. That's one of my favorite campus ministry moments.
I like that. I really like that story.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sammy, if people wanted to be in touch with you, we haven't seen how they might do that.
So they can definitely connect with me on Facebook. I'm on Facebook there. We have our private group going on Facebook as well.
What is it called?
And
Is it just
the
your name or something else?
Yeah, so it's Sami Madden on Facebook. Yeah. And they can connect with me. I'm the picture with the dogs. So anyway, uh
I've been in Sammy so many times, and it's a
lively with dogs.
dog playground.
It is. It's dog playground. So
Unfortunately, Fred just died last
yeah.
week, but
Yeah,
uh,
our pup Fred. So, yeah, it's our house is lively with dogs. So I have pictures of my dogs on there. So that's how they can connect with me. And I think that party wisdom is, I think I liked what that story, Father Nathan, because I think that's so important for us to remember, is that we just need, everyone to think about themselves as, in an ordinary, striving for that, and not stress about trying to be extraordinary.
yeah. Sammy, St. Catherine of Siena has a quote about that. Do you know it?
No.
I'll just
No.
misquote her, but
Okay.
somebody will listen to this and correct me. But it has to do with if you just be yourself, fully alive, you'll set the world on fire.
Oh,
Something like that.
yes. Yeah.
Yeah. And you, Minda dear, do you have words of wisdom to leave us with?
I think it wake up just saying, "Thank you, God, for be making me me,
Mhm.
and I am enough." Don't compare. People compare each other, and the only label that you need to carry with you is, "I am God's child," and that's enough.
Yes. I try to, I'm a preacher, and
Yeah.
the opening scenes of the Gospels all have Jesus being baptized. But because four different people are telling the story, there's variance in the story. But one thing that's common to them is Jesus hearing, or the people around him hearing, a voice that says, "You are my child, my beloved," or "This is my
Mhm.
child, my beloved." And I come back to that a lot because I don't know that a lot of us can hear it all the way to our heart. Uh, um, it can
Mhm.
kind of bounce off. It can sound like a platitude. And when we really know how that we're loved at the core of our being by the one who made the whole universe, it makes it a little easier when somebody disapproves of us, or we're compared negatively, or um, frustrating things happen around us. Well, okay, I don't like that, but I'm still God's child. There's that, and
Mhm.
that's plenty. Minda, I hope I get to see you face to face one day. And Sami, I think we're overdue for lunch. We haven't done that in quite a long while. Sami only lives a couple of miles away, so there's no reason why we can't. I pray for you all the time. And when I do, I pray especially for wherever there's a tender spot in you that needs a healing touch. If there's anything in your story that has some unhealed uh, character about it, when I pray for you, I ask the Lord to go to that spot and see if there's something that can be done to heal and promote new growth. So if you want to be in touch with me, my website is nathan-castle.com. If you are interested in the afterlife work that my prayer partners and I do, I ask that you first read at least one of my books in the Afterlife Interrupted series before having questions about that. That way, when we do get together, we'll have a richer understanding. Again, this has been Minda Cox and Sami Madden. Hey, Minda. So I'm really grateful for your presence in the world, for sharing your gifts with us on the podcast, and for painting a little portrait of me. Thank you from my heart to yours. God bless. Bye-bye. I hope you enjoyed this episode of The Joyful Friar. Please like, follow, and subscribe. You can visit me at nathan-castle.com. Send me a message by clicking the contact button. God bless.